This video is sponsored by the sad McDonald's I've just eaten at 11:30 p.m. in Eindhoven. Full time happened at the Philips Stadium. PSV 2, Arsenal 0. Wow, that was our worst performance of the season by some distance. I know I said that on Twitter. And a few people came back at me and said, "Oh, you obviously didn't see Leeds or you didn't see Southampton." I said, "Well, no, I did see those games, and we had bad halves, a subject I wrote about today on The Athletic. Do read it. But this was a pretty bad 90 minutes. Even within that, the second half was substantially worse than the first. I thought the first was very flat and sloppy. But then when you looked at the numbers at the interval, Arsenal had like 65% possession. I think there was something like 8 shots to 2. So as bad as it felt, there was a relative degree of sort of control from Arsenal, apart from sort of the threat in behind on the counter-attack. But the second half was really poor. And, you know, I'm probably going to not talk hugely about individual performances because honestly, I don't think there was a player out there who came out of this with much credit. Literally from the goalkeeper through to the centre forward, I thought Arsenal struggled. Not to use it as an excuse, I think the surface was tricky for Arsenal. You could see the ball as they played it along the pitch, along the grass, just sort of bobbling around, and they struggled to control it. People say, oh, they're professional footballers, they should be able to control football on whatever the pitch. Of course. But if every single day you train and play on immaculate surfaces, maybe there is going to be some adjustment. Arsenal probably should have been capable of that adjustment, but they weren't. And there are other factors at play there. Going into the game, I thought PSV would win. The reason being that they sort of needed to. And Arsenal, although they wanted to, did not need to tonight. As frustrating a performance and disappointing result as it was, it hasn't cost Arsenal a great deal. They're still in a very strong position where I think a point next Thursday sees them win the group. So it was bad, but it's not a disaster. That's sort of one of the fortunate things about Arsenal this season, that when we have dropped points, it hasn't cost us enormously. You know, you think about the weekend, we drew with Southampton. That was disappointing, but everyone around us dropped points. Yes, we lost tonight. We're still in a very strong position in the group. So important to keep perspective, but I found it interesting that after the game, Mikel Arteta spoke about needing a reset. Now, for a manager who's top of the Premier League table and top of his Europa League table, they seem like quite strong words, but I think they speak to his sense that this is a team that's been, ailing would be too strong, struggling would be too strong, just showing some signs of sort of not being able to match the level of performance they have done over the last few games, maybe over the last few weeks. And to be honest, maybe that shouldn't be any great surprise. I mean, Arsenal came out of the blocks absolutely flying. Think back, they had that brilliant pre-season and then they started the season in superb form. Maybe that isn't sustainable, and there are going to be periods like this where they're not playing as well, where they lose the odd game. You know, none of us expected Arsenal to be in the position they're in right now. And maybe there's a sort of certain element of kind of levelling out going on. That said, I think what he's talking about, Arteta, is a psychological reset, because physically there is no reset. The games keep on coming. There's no real time to recover. But psychologically, I think it's an opportunity for him to sort of look at these final few fixtures before the World Cup, really set some clear targets and try and get back to the basic principles that took Arsenal to the position they're in right now. I mean, they need to start putting the ball in the net as well. That's something that has fallen away a little bit. You know, the goals are drying up. It's been a long time since Eddie or Gabriel Jesus got themselves a goal. We're not taking chances clinically as we were. Even in this game, very good chance for Martinelli, I thought, when the ball dropped to him after that Tomiyasu header. Eddie had a couple of half-decent opportunities. So if we were finishing well, it might have been a slightly different story. But I don't want to sort of gloss over this performance. Honestly, there were times we couldn't string passes together, couldn't trap the ball. It was by any measure bad. I think, the goals, well, they put the ball in the net twice, but they actually had it in the net 5 times. Obviously, the offsides, you can look at them and say, well, that's good defending. They kept the line right, they played them offside, but there were instances in some of those goals where Arsenal looked a bit ropey defensively at the back. The first one, the runner isn't tracked. The second one's obviously a big goalkeeping error. I think he'll be the first to admit that. So yeah, all in all, it was not a good night. But if you were picking a fixture for Arsenal to have next, I know they just beat Liverpool, but you couldn't get a much kinder fall of the fixture list than at home to Nottingham Forest. So hopefully Arsenal put it right then, and we can all start feeling happy again. I mean, genuinely, it has been a fantastic season, and I think a defeat, even if it's the first time in, 10, 11 games, opens up some old wounds and people will be feeling it tonight. But if you're going to have an absolute shocker, as I said earlier in the night to my Twitter followers, I guess it might as well come in a Europa League group stage game that doesn't matter a great deal. But still painful for the fans who made the trip, who definitely deserve better than what they got tonight. And I do think that fatigue looks like a factor for this team at the present point in time. But there's not very much we can do about that. There is not very much we can do about that. I'll leave it there for now. Speak to you all on Sunday. Bye-bye.